Right, so the return of one of the most feared groups in modern history in the Middle East, which came into being thanks to the destabilisation of Iraq following the wars there, well, this is serious stuff, you might be thinking. And you might consider this to be in relation to the groups now running Syria, of course, many of them having such former operatives in their ranks, speaking volumes of who is actually in charge in Syria these days. But it isn't actually as obvious as that, because this could actually come as a result of epic stupidity of a certain world leader who has far too high an opinion of himself, and who figures his role in the Middle East and the actions going on right now are a lot bigger and more important than they are. But he might be about to make himself a lot more important for all of the wrong reasons, as a situation being regarded as a ticking time bomb could be about to be set off by their direct actions. We're talking yet another invasion of Syria. We're talking an invasion this time coming from the north, and the invaders being Turkey, making the idiot responsible a certain Recep Tayyip Erdogan, whose only real claim to any sort of role in the Middle East up until now in reality has been to keep the oil flowing to Israel whilst pretending to give a damn about the people of Palestine. If Erdogan continues his determination to invade northern Syria though, the fear is it will trigger a return of ISIS in the area, a group that has largely been assimilated by the likes of HTS and others now running Syria, but not this lot that we're talking about here exactly. Let me explain. Right, so yet another invasion of Syria on the cards it seems, this time by Erdogan's Turkey. All now very much a real fear following the appearance of Turkish forces on the Syrian border with eyes on the Syrian town of Kobani, which came about on the 17th of December, though they'd been building up their forces for the last fortnight on that border since the Assad regime fell to HTS. Now I posted an image of occupied areas of Syria up on a video from the other day, and here it is again. The green belt at the top, Turkish-occupied northern Syria, with that gap in the middle, the town of Kobani being the northernmost gap. So this is, on the face of it, a determination by Turkey to control the entirety of its border with Syria by occupying a belt of Syrian territory some 30 kilometres wide. And this is all despite Erdogan invoking his buddy Donald Trump's thinking and building a wall all along the Turkish border with Kobani. But seemingly a wall is just not enough for him. Now, Kobani is a Kurdish-controlled town. This is Kurdish-controlled territory in Syria, one of the diverse groups living in Syria and a group responsible for routing ISIS from the area formerly, as well as keeping Turkey out as well. Erdogan trying to seize this bit of territory back in 2019. He was repelled by the Kurds at that point, alongside the Syrian army and also Russia. Well, now that Assad is gone, Erdogan is once again trying it on with the Kurds, and fear of an invasion is high once more. This time around, Turkey is backing a group calling themselves the Syrian National Army, a group of disaffected Syrian army and other armed groups, including more ISIS and Al-Qaeda leftovers who opposed Assad, fought in the Syrian civil war, and are not the same as the Syrian army despite the very similar names, which makes it all much more confusing to explain. Well, they are far different. These guys are doing Erdogan's dirty work in Kobani at this moment in time, although Turkey are apparently providing them with air support already. But the expectation is that Turkish forces could cross the border and join them at any moment. Now, Erdogan's issue, Turkey's issue, is with the Kurds themselves. When ISIS first appeared, for example, Turkey supported them. They were fighting the Kurds. But when the Kurds won out, this was not what Erdogan wanted, not what Turkey wanted. Their issue with the Kurds goes back decades. The region, referred to as Kurdistan, comprises parts of Turkey, Syria, Iraq and Iran. And in the 1980s, Turkey attempted to forcibly assimilate this culturally distinct group. The Turkish Kurds were oppressed, and to this day Turkey just won't let it go. They've blown hundreds of billions on fighting the Kurds over the years, notably here in Syrian Kurdistan, as we're seeing now. Northern Syria is the area we're talking about. And following this HTS takeover of Syria, Erdogan is sensing another opportunity to attack the Kurds in northern Syria again. Now, complicating this picture even further is that under the banner of the People's Protection Units, or YPG as they're known for short, which came into being in 2011, the Kurds took control of their traditional lands in Syria, and they did so with US backing. It gave the US an in to the parts of Syria where Syria's oil fields are ostensibly, but it puts the US and Turkey at odds with each other over this issue. And given Erdogan and Trump get on so well, you kind of worry about where things might go when he returns to the US presidency. That's a problem that may arise further down the line, though. The YPG have produced a splinter group since, in the years intervening, the Syrian Democratic Forces, or SDF, who are the main US-aligned element of the Kurdish forces opposing Turkish threats. Right now, the Turkish authorities have vowed to thwart the establishment of a Kurdish state. It all sounds a little bit familiar at this point, doesn't it? Led by the Syrian Democratic Forces as that would be, stating that they won't allow it to exist as an alleged threat to their national security, that one again, along Turkey's southern border. There is also fears that Turkish troops could end up running incursions into other areas of Syria too, threatening the nation's sovereignty even further. For example, let us come to a recent statement made by Erdogan on this very matter, which not only underlines this fear, but also goes to show what an absolute weapon and hypocrite he is in his own right, having stated, "It must be said loudly that Israel's occupation of lands in Syria is unacceptable. We will continue to corner Israel and force it to act according to the law. Drafting the constitution is the most important step in the process of rebuilding the Syrian state. We are in contact with the new administration in Syria headed by Ahmed al-Sharaa. We will help the new administration in Syria in the matter of rebuilding the state and concluding a new social contract. Lifting the sanctions imposed during the rule of the Assad regime will help in rebuilding Syria. We will double our trade relations with Syria, which will bring great benefits to both countries in various fields." Yes, Erdogan giving Israel stick for occupying Syria there, but where Syria were on the side of ISIS elements previously against the Kurds, and still are where the Syrian National Army are concerned, Erdogan is also allying himself with HTS and their boss Ahmed al-Sharaa, who is still better known as al-Jilani, even to the point he is helping al-Jilani to draw up a new constitution for Syria. Al-Jilani, of course, though, was also aided, funded, and is in diplomatic talks with the US, however. So the number of diplomatic directions this situation in Syria is being pulled in just keeps on increasing. And it is at this point the fear of an ISIS revival comes into effect. Elements of that terrorist group are very much now running Syria as part of HTS and other groups who aided them in deposing Assad. There are more of these elements allied to Turkey fighting the Kurds. But the ticking time bomb being referred to in my blurb at the beginning concerns the thousands upon thousands of ISIS terrorists locked up in Syrian detention in Kurdish territory, who ostensibly would readily ally themselves with the new Syrian regime and their wannabe new besties Turkey and Erdogan, and the alarm is very much being sounded by the US here, who do not want a bar of this, despite having been happy to work with ISIS and Al-Qaeda elements themselves to see Assad fall. US interference making matters worse. Well, colour me surprised, eh? Anyway, here's an excerpt from the Cradle detailing the US getting more than it bargained for here with its foreign interference. Approximately 10,000 battle-hardened ISIS fighters are detained by the SDF in northeastern Syria, with around 5,000 being Syrians, 3,000 Iraqis, and about 2,000 hail from Europe, Central Asia and North America. Additionally, there are about 56,000 displaced persons, including the family members of ISIS fighters, held in camps like Al-Hol and Al-Roj. If we want to make sure that these camps are properly guarded, we, the United States, need to provide the Syrian Kurds with assurances that we will prevent Turkey from attacking them, US Senator Chris Van Hollen, a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, said in a recent interview. When Turkey supports the Syrian National Army's attacks against the Kurds, the big winner is ISIS. In 2010, 1 year before the start of the US-backed war in Syria, the predecessor of ISIS, the Islamic State of Iraq, had been defeated. But US planners eventually released leaders of the group from Buqa prison in Iraq, reviving the organisation and allowing it to launch an insurgency against the neighbouring government of Bashar al-Assad. US support for ISIS continues as it captured large swathes of Syria and Iraq in 2014, including as the organisation conquered the cities of Raqqa and Mosul. The US then used the threat of ISIS to justify returning US troops to Iraq with the permission of the Iraqi government. If Turkey invade, the release of 10,000 ISIS fighters could all of a sudden be loosed on Syria, plus 56,000 family members of them, now run by ISIS and Al-Qaeda leftovers as Syria is now, who could use it all to rebuild their organisation of terror. And in no small part is that down to US stupidity and intrusion. But Turkey's long-standing beef with the Kurds could be the last straw that sees this actually happen, should they now invade northern Syria. Another fine mess of Western invasion. Meanwhile, whilst Israel is getting short shrift from the hypocrite Erdogan, they're getting a pasting to from the Houthis in Yemen right now, rapidly becoming Israel's public enemy number one. But what exactly can they do about it other than get out of Gaza, of course? Fighting the Houthis never goes down well for anyone. History proves that. But all the details of this latest move by Yemeni forces can be found in this video recommendation here as your suggested next watch. Please do like, share and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. It all supports the channel and is very much appreciated. More content dropping daily, so I hope it's worth your while as well. And I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.